Hey, Michael from CTW here, and just wanted to kind of go over a real world question that we get. I know people get a little confused, and worst thing to do is be at the track and somebody runs up and they throw a new term at you and you run away and try to figure out what in the world they're talking about. So this one came up the other day, wanted to talk about it. It's basically velocity and acceleration in your dyno, and they can be a little confusing if you haven't worked through it. So we are all used to making a test running to various speeds, 1, 3, 5, 10. And as we know, the yoke's going round and round and the dyno's creating linear motion. So we understand, we run at 10 inches per second, we look at our graph and we get the curve. But what does it really mean? So that's what I want to talk about so you feel a little more confident when it comes up. So here's a visual description of what it's doing. Your cam follower going around and round. We start at the bottom dead center and we go from zero velocity out to peak velocity, compressing the shock. This would be mid-stroke. And then we go slow down to zero velocity again, and this is top dead center. So this is the compression out to peak velocity, compression to zero. The extension is peak velocity, extension back down to zero velocity. Shock 6, we called those CVPs, and everybody kind of gets stuck on that constant velocity plot or continuous velocity plot. Well, it really isn't. It's really talking about the peak velocity. So a 10 inch per second CVP is actually going from zero velocity out to 10 inches per second. How does it get there? It has to accelerate, right? So it's accelerating from zero to peak velocity, 10 inches, and then it's deaccelerating back down to zero. So your crank dyno, whether you know it or not, has a component of acceleration. You can't go from 0 to 10 without accelerating. Now, it could be constant, it could be increasing, kind of depends, but this is accelerating, and that's what your dyno is doing. So if somebody's talking to you about, well, you need to think about accelerations, well, your dyno is actually doing it. It's accelerating from 0 to whatever peak velocity you have. So, again, to rehash, we're going out to 10 inches, we're accelerating and deaccelerating. So that's important to understand. Now, when you are on, say, a 2 inch stroke, you run to 10 inches, you accelerate to get to 10 inches. But if you now choose to run at a speed of 3 inches instead of 10, you don't have to go as fast, so you do not have to accelerate as hard. It is something very key to understand. So if you're going to 10 inches per second, you're accelerating at one rate. If you're going to 3, you're accelerating at a slower rate. What does that all mean? Well, it's how the internals of your damper work differently, how your piston, how your bleed is working by different accelerations, which is a key to understand. If you're running at 10 and you're trying to estimate what your dampers does at 1 inch per second, that's different than running at 1 inch per second, because now we know there's a component of acceleration. Just like changing velocities. Also, if you change your stroke, so if you go to a 2 inch stroke to a 1 inch stroke and you still try to go out to that same 10 inches per second, you have less time because you've just took your stroke in half. You have less time to get there. You're going to have to accelerate harder. So you have two ways to affect acceleration. One is by changing the stroke. One is by changing the velocity. And you have to be aware because it will affect how your damper responds. All this stuff, these terms, these ideas, they go into yet another term that someday we'll get to, and that is frequency. But for now, let's just stick with the basics. We all understand peak velocity. Now we start to understand accelerating to 1 inch is very different than accelerating to 10 inches. Your damper will operate different in that realm. That's what is going on. That's what people are talking about. I just wanted to help you understand that a little bit more. We've gone over the last two videos, the dyno running, how it accelerates from zero velocity to peak velocity and back. And in the end, running from 0 to 10 is very different acceleration-wise, running to just 1 inch per second. And you can see on the screen, we have run a damper a linear compression, a digressive rebound. We've run it at 4 speeds, 1, 3, 5, and 10. And you can see that, yeah, from around 3 inches on, it's all the same slope. It's hit the valve stack. But if we isolate on just the 1 inch per second and the 10, you can then clearly see massive difference in the graphs. So the black one's out to 10. It has to accelerate very quickly. It will bypass the bleed and hit those valves on the piston pretty quick. The 1 inch per second, very different. Doesn't have to accelerate very fast. So all the fluid gets to go through the bleed. You can see dramatically different in that area. And this comes to the ultimate. In the past, we would run at 10 inches. And when somebody said, how much force does it make at 1? We would go 10. It makes this amount of force in here. But if you actually run at 1 inch, very different. So that's what we need to understand when we talk about running at different speeds. On a crank dyno, we're actually running at different accelerations. Very, very important to understand. Just a little quick there. We're going to do an extended video in the future, but that gets you thinking. So wanted to give a shout out to our great friends at YSS down in Thailand. Got to visit them. Hopefully I get to go back every year and enjoy the scenery. There you go.